Well, good evening, everyone. This is Frank Fear from Mountaineer Locker Room, and on this very late Friday evening, Greg Chris, the co-host, will be with us as soon as he can make a connection. But we're pleased you're here for a game that we're going to be up very late for. And just to remind you, because of the lateness of the game tonight, our post-game show will be tomorrow from 11 o'clock until noon. So if you have a chance, please tune in tomorrow, October 4th in the morning at 11 o'clock to 12. We thought that would be a good time because we can sleep in, and then the pregame shows for the afternoon games start at noon. So we hope we can, we'll sneak in there. But this is a game that I know we're looking forward to. It just hasn't gone the way we had hoped for the Mountaineers this year, but as they say, there's always hope. And let me share some of the thoughts that are coming in. And here's our good friend Timothy Green. My prediction is for tonight's game is 31-28. I tell you, Timothy, loyal Mountaineer, 31-28. West Virginia, and he says he might be a little bit optimistic, overly maybe so, but you got to go with the Mountaineers and hope they can do tonight what they did against Pitt. Let me see some others here. We've got Caden. There's always hope, as I said. One of the things that I think we've talked about on our Wednesday show and also in all the pregame and postgame shows is that what we're looking for tonight is consistency. The offense clearly has been a challenge. BYU is a very, very good team, formidable, in fact. Reminds me a lot of Utah in the sense that they have a very good quarterback, even though he's a true freshman, and a good offense, very good defense, maybe Coach Rodriguez said maybe the best set of linebackers that we're going to face this season, at least so far. Very fast, very nimble, well coached, and of course, they're going to be playing at home. If you've been out in Provo or have watched games out there, you know it's a very, very difficult place to play. The crowd is loud. Night games, it gets accelerated. So as loud as it gets during the day, it seems it's louder at night. But we're just going to have to hope that the Mountaineers can show us some things that they haven't shown us. Periodically they have, but consistency is the key word. There's absolutely no question about that. And we just have to make sure that at some point this season, and obviously it's a major issue, and that is we are able to contain offenses, get our time of possession increased. That's extremely important. And one of the things we've been talking about is how important, and they always are, the special teams. We've got to make sure we get touchbacks. Ethan Head kicked the ball into the end zone, and we have to make sure we don't get long returns. And on the offensive side, we've got to call the plays that gives the quarterback time to be able to get out of the pocket, do what he needs to do. A lot of rollouts last week and throws on the run. And the other thing is to be able to make sure that our running backs can gain some yards. Whether Ty will be able to play tonight, I think is a big issue. It's really important. Let's take a look at BYU for a second. For those of you who may not be as familiar, they've got a true freshman, Bear Beckmeyer, at quarterback. He reminds me a lot of quarterbacks in the past who have looked more like actually running backs. He's not the traditional dual threat quarterback that we've seen out of other teams this year, and he's not really a pro set quarterback either. In fact, one of the things that stuck out to us is last week he had 100 yards on the ground in last week's game against Colorado, and so that's something we've got to look at. 700 yards passing for the year, not necessarily something that just impresses you, but again, he's a true freshman. Running back, L.J. Martin, again, not monster numbers, 400 yards, but look at the yards per average, 7.3 yards per average. Same thing with the wide receiver, Chase Roberts, who's their leading wide receiver, 234 yards, but 14.6 yards per catch. And there are those linebackers, too, that we need to watch tonight Kelly and Glasgow, 36 total tackles between them. But if you look at the top of the graphic there, some things that really stuck out to me as we looked at BYU's stats across all the NCAA D1 teams is that great time of possession, 33 minutes per game. They're in the top 15, 70% red zone scoring. So the key there is obviously to keep BYU out of the end zone, out of the red zone, because they scored 7 out of 10 times. And something that Mickey pointed out on the Wednesday show, which I think is really perhaps the biggest key for the game, number 7 in total defense, which really is a monster stat when you think about our offense, struggling as it is. They're limiting teams to under 4 yards per play and 227 yards total per game. If you look at the bottom of the graphic, remember Jack Retzloff, tremendous quarterback. If you saw the Utah BYU game last year that was played in Salt Lake City, it looked like Utah had that game completely in the bag. And in fact, what Retzloff did was to drive that team literally all the way from their own 1 to get the winning touchdown. And BYU came from behind and won that game. So Retzlaff is not with the team this year because of off-the-field issues. And so he's transferred to Tulane. Another thing that we talked about on Wednesday that it also bears, I think, repeating tonight is that we're not quite sure how good BYU is this year. When you look at their schedule, Portland State, they opened up against Portland State and really want them. Stanford is not a very good team. This year they've had issues in Palo Alto. East Carolina is the only team they played so far this year with a winning record. And then they beat Colorado last week at Boulder. And an aggregate record for Colorado, their opponents are 7-13. So another thing we talked about on Wednesday is, the schedule isn't looking kindly on West Virginia because we had to essentially play this game more, as Coach Rodriguez said, more mentally than physically prepared because after the game on Saturday, we had a couple of days of practice and then we had to get out to Provo on yesterday. And so it's been a very short week for the Mountaineers. And as I also mentioned on Wednesday, the data show that when Eastern teams travel west, it's much more difficult on the Eastern teams than when the Western teams travel east. And of course, that's a situation that we're in this week. Let me put up a couple of other comments that we have. Actually, they're all from Timothy. Yeah, exactly. When they get to the red zone, they tend to score a lot. He goes on to say, I truly believe we will be the best team they have faced so far this year, and that may well be true. I think it's fair to say that we haven't seen the best, we hope, the best from the Mountaineers yet this year. And if you think back to that Pitt game, we turned the game around, came back and won that game when it looked like Pitt was starting to move ahead, had a double-digit lead. And so what you have to hope is that we can overcome the negatives associated with leaving early, having a short week, playing on the road at night with a raucous crowd. And finally, Timothy says a couple things that bother me about this is the long trip, absolutely. The short week, certainly. The altitude, I'm glad you brought that up. We looked at the data on altitude, and that stadium is about 5,000 feet, which is significantly more than what the Mountaineers have, even in Morgantown. I think Morgantown's about 1,300, 1,400 feet above sea level. Well, that stadium is 5,000. So conditioning is really important. We've got to watch that. And I'm sure there'll be a lot of folks rotating in and out. So it's a game that the Mountaineers have to win. There's no question about that. And yet, the last time I looked at the odds, they were 19 and a half point underdogs. But, as they say, they don't play the game on paper, they play it on turf. And so we're just going to have to hope, and I keep on using that word, but I think it's fair that what we're going to have to look for tonight, even if it's not a win, is progress. And as I said earlier, consistency. That the Mountaineers can show us some things, not just tonight, but get the ball rolling on offense and on defense. What we need to see is more of what we saw in the defense in the early games, stout defense, stopping the run, and especially playing havoc with the quarterback, being able to hurry the quarterback and to hopefully get him on the ground. And if not on the ground, to make it more difficult for the quarterback tonight to complete his passes. Last week, as I mentioned, against Colorado, they did a reasonable job of doing that. And what happened was that he was able to run against them. So that's something else that we need to look at. In terms of predictions, if you follow the show, you know that each week we make our predictions for each week's game. And let me pull that up so you can see it. Predictions that our guys had. Greg picks BYU to win by 7 points. And good reasons for that. Obviously, with the 19.5 point underdog, you would expect that the most predictions would be BYU. But so only 7 points, though. Again, that's really important. You see, all of us believe that the Mountaineers will score, or at least predicting, at least 14 points. Greg has it at 17. I have the Mountaineers winning, but you know what? I go with my heart. I'm going to pick the Mountaineers every single week, so it doesn't make any difference who they're playing. I'm going to go with the Mountaineers, and I have them 24-21. And Mickey, who's leading our prediction series so far, 2 games. Greg has 2 games, and I have 1. I won once. He predicts the Mountaineers 17-14. So the question, I think, for us tonight is let's watch the game very closely. Let's hope the Mountaineers can do some things in a consistent way that they haven't done. And what I'm going to be looking for, I've got several keys to the game that I'll share with you. Before I do that, there's a new comment up. Well, thank you very much, Timothy. I think you wrote all those things for me, so I appreciate that. Timothy sent me a text and said, "Hey, Frank, make sure you say these things." But we think alike. So thanks. I appreciate that, Timothy. Time of possession is really important. And one of the things we have not done very well at all this season, and the data show it nationally, and also even if you weren't comparing us with other teams, is to sustain drives. Obviously they can't score if they don't have the ball. But the bottom line is to sustain drives. We don't know who the starting quarterback will be. A lot of people think that it'll be Wilkins. And the reason he showed a lot in the last several games when he came in, he runs extremely well, throws it well enough to keep the defenses honest. Asking a lot for a redshirt freshman, but we all know that Nico is not going to be playing this year. Henderson has been up and down, but it'll be very interesting to see who comes out and takes that opening ball from the quarterback. Will this game be over by midnight? A lot of people would say Paxton, probably. And so that's another thing to watch. The longer that the Mountaineers can stay in the game, the more that they can keep BYU out of the end zone, which is asking a lot. The data that I showed a few minutes ago, the better our chances are. A lot of what we're looking at tonight really is cliche, because we don't have a lot to go on in terms of, well, the Mountaineers do this, they do that, they do something really, really well. We were relying on the defense, and then the defense gave up 40 points in consecutive games, and so it's these kickoff times are ridiculous. I agree with you. In fact, many of you follow Kuz and Kuz's Corner, and he posted on X tonight, and I responded to it. He said, "Hey, Big 12 and also the networks, can you have two Western teams play each other on these Friday night games?" Last week was great, Colorado versus BYU. How about Utah versus BYU, as Arizona State? But asking a team to go out there without the benefit of a bye week, where they don't have the extra practices, really is asking a lot. So I think, again, going back to what I was saying, sustaining drives, very, very important. Special teams is something that not only is extremely important, but I think, with the exception of our place kicker, which has been consistent this year, as it has been in recent years, is that we've got to, as I mentioned earlier, those kickoffs need to get into the end zone. We need touchbacks. West Virginia has not done a good job this year in terms of basically getting those touchbacks, and we've been burned a couple times. It really showed in the Utah game, where kickoffs were shorter and they were run. One was run back for a touchdown, as you recall, and another one was run for a long distance. And BYU has the capacity to do that. That's extremely important. And also, Oliver Straw, the first two kicks last week against Utah averaged 30 yards. That's just not Oliver Straw. I don't know if he's injured. I hadn't heard that. But the bottom line is that we need to rely on our special teams punting to pin back BYU, so they have to go a long way in their drives. And what we have to hope is that we don't turn the ball over, and that we get turnovers. And that also has been a sore point. If you look at the national stats for West Virginia, when you look at turnovers that we have versus turnovers that we create, it's clearly in the favor of the opposition. That any coach will tell you that's really a killer. You watch that, and you just hope that that flips this week. Timothy's back with another comment. Let's not forget, about those turnovers, and a need to keep the ball as long as we can. Absolutely. Told you that we think alike. They have a dual threat quarterback, but I think our defense can slow them down. Absolutely. And one of the other things that we've been decimated with, obviously, is injuries, and we just can't afford any more injuries. And I don't have to remind anybody who follows WVU that we have to have offensive schemes that takes the pressure off our offensive line. Our offensive line we knew it was going to be tough. In a poll that was asked of fans before the season, and the question was asked, what is the one thing that worries you the most about the 25 Mountaineers? It was the offensive line, and voila, that's been a real sore point. And we're having trouble with Speedy, and with not only defensive lines, but also with linebackers, and also when there are larger and faster, in some ways, defensive secondaries. At the same time, our back end has to not give up big plays. That's extremely important. We need to play taut defense, and so I wouldn't be surprised if even if we win the toss tonight, if we may go on defense first. Another comment from Paxton: I just don't ever recall these late kickoffs, and I've watched college football my whole life. Well, I think the situation now, there's so much competition among the networks. And it's not just ESPN and Fox, but it's a lot of competition. Game tonight is on ESPN. And what they want to do is they want to feature Friday night games. The Big Ten is featured on NBC. And so actually, this is the marquee game, late marquee game, BYU and West Virginia. And, that's where the money is coming from to a large extent. The coffers of conferences, the NCAA and the schools, are these games. And so you sit back and have to wait until the networks decide which network will be broadcasting which games, and then what kickoff time will be. I remember, Bo Schembechler, the great Michigan coach, years ago when at the end of his career, it was beginning to be taken over by the networks. And he said, you guys can cover us anytime you want. We're going to kick off at 1 o'clock. But of course, that was tongue in cheek because the schools really don't have a lot of control over that. Timothy, again, with all the quarterbacks we've been playing against, we've had a lot of penalties due to the cadence. Yeah, a lot of penalties. And tonight, one of the things that we're going to have to contend with is we're going to have to contend with a tremendous amount of crowd noise. If you ever watched a game, if you've ever been at Provo, football is huge there. They have a large basketball arena, 20,000, but football is king in Provo. They won a national championship back in the 80s, beat Michigan to do it, by the way, in the Holiday Bowl. And the situation out at BYU is they live for these games. And a night game on Friday night that is nationally televised and is a sole. Basically, we're competing with the end of the NBC Big Ten game, and so it's huge. I mean, there's no question about it. That's going to be tough, particularly for a young team to come in and not be rattled. The advantage we have is we've got an old hand in Rich Rod, great staff he has. Excuse me. So as a consequence, they're going to be as prepared as they possibly can be. And the other thing I have in terms of keys to the game is that we have to really make sure, although to say that is actually foolish, there's nothing I can do, is the big plays are killers. We saw that in the Pitt game. Things were going great. There was that one long pass completed for a touchdown, and then that just turned it. And Pitt basically ran off a string of points. And luckily, we came back with a quarterback change back to Nico. And I may mention about that game too. One of the things I think that, for me at least, set that game apart is that our tight ends were actively involved in that game, particularly in the second half. And so one of the other keys I have for the game tonight is to make sure that those tight ends are active. And I think it also puts a tremendous amount of pressure to make sure that we, two things, that on the offensive side, the game plan means that we pick plays. Rich Rod says this all the time, and I agree with him, that if we focus too much on the plays, 8 or 9 times out of 10, it's not the play that's called that is the key. It's the execution of the play. And we would all agree with that. But you have to be able to call the right play at the right time. And of course, the coaches have been watching film and dissecting what BYU does. And if there's an advantage for our defense, is that you have a true freshman at quarterback. So as a consequence, and this, you're football fans, that you simply can't play with a true freshman, no matter what your offense is, with a full bore offense. You have to contour that offense to what that true freshman can do so that he's not put in a situation where he's going to fail. And any coach will tell you, you put your players in a situation where they can succeed as best you can. You're not out there running the plays, they are. But you have to put your players in situations where their strengths are evident, not their weaknesses. That said, that's really been a challenge for West Virginia. We saw it with Nico. It looks now that he may have been injured before we knew he was injured with that foot. But in many cases, just as soon as he made the decision to run, there was a defender there to take him down. And that may well be that he may not be the best fit for a Rich Rod dual threat offense at quarterback. But the fact of the matter is that whomever the quarterback is tonight, those plays that are picked that are to the strength of the quarterback, that don't put the offensive line in situations where they're asked to do things that they just can't do very well. And if we can't run the ball, this has been an issue. You know this. You've seen the stats. If you can't run the ball in football, you have a difficult time winning games. And we have not, outside of the Pitt game, when Ty had over 100 yards, we have not run the ball effectively. That's in part because Ty Edwards was really only effective he was only played in one game, and also because the offensive line has not opened up the holes, but also because we played against mobile and very good offensive lines and linebackers, and they can cheat against West Virginia. So Paxton again has another comment. I just don't like Friday kickoffs. I'm with you. That's where I'm coming from on Fridays. That's a really good point. When you think about it, it's encroachment. Friday Night Lights, that's high school football. And times do change, and the money drives it. And the networks want to be able to show games. I mean, think about it. Before too long, we're going to have football games on Tuesday night. We're going to have football games on Wednesday night. We're going to have football games on Friday night and Saturday. And the conferences have worked out an arrangement with the networks so that they adjust their schedules so the teams are available to play Tuesday and Wednesday. And I do the show from Michigan during football season, and we're close to the Mid-America Conference, and you get to see Eastern Michigan, Akron, Bowling Green, Miami of Ohio, University of Buffalo, all those teams, they play midweek games. And last year, I know a lot of you, because we follow Rich Rod, we saw Jackson State multiple times playing midweek games. And so that is just the way the system is. Timothy has another question. Edwards is supposed to be returning tonight as our starting running back. He was questionable earlier in the week. Thank you, Timothy, for that. Let's keep our fingers crossed. That is going to be a bellwether. First, that he will play. And if he can play, he will start. I don't think there's any question about that. And number two is we've got to watch that very closely, how he does against that BYU front seven. Can he get yards against them? We absolutely have to eat up time. There's no other way around it, that we have to eat up time. That time of possession is something to watch very closely. You know, we're going to do that post-game show, as I mentioned, tomorrow morning from 11 to 12. And one of the things I do, and you may do it at home too, is that I have a notepad and I start taking notes and look at the stats after each quarter. And I look at time of possession. I look at rushing yards, obviously, passing yards, the comparison of time of possession, and that's something to look at. I mean, in many ways, even those of us who haven't played at the college level, we're at a point in our lives where you can analyze football games, and you can be able to pick out areas, stats that are really critical, that, like turnovers, that you know have a tremendous impact on the outcomes of games. Greg has, hello, I'm prevented from joining you, but enjoying listening. This is Greg. This is our Greg. Greg, yeah, please. More from Greg Christ here. It's Greg C. I didn't know who that was. But at any rate, sorry that you can't be with us, Greg. That's just awful. I wish I could fix that, but obviously I can't. But please jot in any questions, any thoughts, anything you want to ask me, anything you want to ask the viewers. We would appreciate that. Greg has a keen mind, and he always enjoy interacting with him. And obviously, I'm missing him a lot tonight. Um, so this is a game. We're going into a bye week. Uh, quite frankly, wish we had the bye week after the Utah game, but didn't happen. And as I mentioned on Wednesday, and I also mentioned it on the post-game show after Utah, the fact that Kansas had a bye week before we traveled out to play them. And now we have to travel west with a short week to play BYU bothers me enormously because that schedule is set by the Big 12 office. And I think what they've done is it's a double whammy against West Virginia. It's unfair. I think it's unfair. And we're not talking about traveling out to Provo and playing it at noon or 3:30 on Saturday. We're talking about traveling to Provo where we're playing at 10:30 Eastern time, which is not 10:30. In terms of when you think of the bodies, the Mountaineer bodies, the time change, as I mentioned earlier, is always more difficult on teams that are traveling west. That's not just me making an assertion. That's based in data, and that applies both to football and basketball. And so it's just not fair. It's just not fair. But we get a bye week at the end of this game, which is helpful. Not so much in terms of the schedule. I don't think the schedule is that important, but it's hopefully the pause that refreshes so that the Mountaineers can have time to take stock. Typically, take a few days off and don't practice as hard, if at all, in pads. And it gives them a chance to essentially get back into the classroom and basically take stock of where the team has been, what we need to do, and get ready for the second half of the season. Here's Greg again. Hopefully our guys keep improving, or should I say start improving. I'm worried, Frank, that West Virginia is walking into a minefield with blindfolds on. Now, I'll tell you what, that is mixing metaphors, but I like it. You're absolutely correct. I mean, what would be phenomenal if you just flip that, Greg, and we end up and the score is 7-0 at halftime, and it's not a minefield, but we're showing some resilience, and we're beginning to do some things that we know we have to do, and we begin doing them well. And I'll use that word again, the P word, persistently, consistently. That's extremely important. Now, wait a minute now. 99. That's right. There you go. Wins by the mercy rule. I don't know. We're just going to have to see. We're just going to have to see. But, and Greg and I have talked about this a lot. Mickey, too. It's just one of those years. We've been through them. I'm sure you've been through them before if you're watching either live or in the archive. I've been through them. Of course, I'm older than probably all of you. But the fact of the matter is we all go through seasons where you just take a deep breath. You hope, you just hope, fingers crossed, toes crossed, that your team can grab one or two. There are no long losing streaks, and that they begin to look like a major college level football team. And we did that in the second half against Pitt. And yet that was at home. It was a huge game. The crowd was wild. And now we're just flipping that script and going into a situation where a team is undefeated, has its eyes on winning a Big Ten championship, has its eyes toward the college football playoff. If you remember last year, BYU thought that they were going to be in that same situation. They are eyeing a Big 12 championship. They're eyeing a conference college playoff slot. Nobody thought Arizona State had a chance to do that. If anybody, it was Iowa State. And lo and behold, Arizona State, predicted by many of the pundits to finish 15th or 16th last year, not only won the conference championship title game, but also probably should have beaten Texas in the college playoffs. The refs were not kind to the Sun Devils. Paxton again. Frank, I've seen a trend of Big 12 favorites not covering in games. You're absolutely correct. Absolutely correct. I mean, the big, I spent years, and I'm still living in Big Ten country because, as many of you know, I worked at Michigan State for a long, long time. And, the difference between the Big Ten and the Big 12 is that the Big 12 is inherently unpredictable, where the Big Ten is predictable. I mean, how many people really gave Penn State a chance to beat Oregon, even in state college? That it seems that Penn State always finds a way to lose the big game against Ohio State, Michigan, and now Oregon's in the lead. So, it's unpredictable. So the question I would say in response to Paxton here, who says that I think they'll be able to keep it close, is 19 and a half points is almost, it's equivalent to a Mid-America team coming into your home stadium. Akron coming into Morgantown, or when Ohio University earlier this season went into Buckeye Land and played the Ohio State Buckeyes. But you don't, obviously, it makes you cringe to think that the last two games against Utah and against BYU were up there in the high teens. That's not Mountaineer football. That's just not what any major college team hopes. And, given what I just said, we all know about Indiana. Indiana is one of those rare birds that just flipped the script immediately when Kurt Cignetti came from James Madison to Bloomington. But that doesn't happen very, very often. That's almost miraculous. I think, I have to double check, that I think historically IU has a sub 500 record in college football, not in basketball, obviously, but in football. And he just flipped that, went to the college football playoff his first year. And you saw what they did to Illinois. Illinois is a good team. And they turn around the next week. Illinois at home wins. And so that shows you that they beat a really good Illinois team. And of course, they're going to be challenged this week. And now teams are going to be gunning for Indiana in ways that it used to be, oh my God, thank goodness, this week we're playing IU. And that's just not the case in the Big Ten anymore. The Big Ten isn't what the Big Ten used to be. But you can't say that the Big Ten is a threat from top to bottom. Think about UCLA. UCLA has really fallen from grace. USC is making a bounce back. They're the team that Illinois beat in Champaign-Urbana last week. But UCLA is really, really struggling. Their coach has been fired. They're just not very good. Rutgers is competitive. You've got to give Shiano a lot of credit for that. Maryland is better than it has been, but still, it's a league that you look to Ohio State, you look to Oregon, to a lesser extent this year, you look to Michigan, Penn State, also to a lesser extent. But then after that, you look at Northwestern, you look at the teams, other teams in the Big Ten. And, the one thing about the Big 12, I think it's a more exciting brand of football, and you just never know from one week to the next. Timothy here. I never thought I would see the day when Rutgers would make the Big Ten. Well, that's a long story that I can compress in a couple of, I'll compress it in one word: money. Rutgers and Maryland were hemorrhaging money, even though Maryland was in the ACC. Rutgers was in the Big East when we were in the Big East. Both of those programs were hemorrhaging money. And you had a commissioner at the time who firmly believed in college athletics is a matter of territorial control. And his vision was having a Big Ten that spanned the coasts from west to east. And so the reason why Rutgers is in the Big Ten is not because they earned it on the field of play, any field of play, football, basketball. If you've been to Rutgers or know of Rutgers or watched a game in basketball, they play in a 1960s or 70s style gym. Actually, I know some high schools that have larger gyms than Rutgers. It was because of where Rutgers is located. The commissioner of the Big Ten wanted to claim the New York metropolitan area, and that's why Rutgers was invited. And he wanted to claim the DC, Baltimore area, the DVM, District, Virginia, and Maryland. Actually, it's the District, Maryland, and Virginia territory, excuse me. And that was about eyeballs on games. Let's grab New York. Let's grab the District, Maryland, and Virginia. And also the big thing I'll go back to what I said at the beginning, Rutgers and Maryland, we're going to bail you out. And they did. But what did they give up in exchange? Rutgers didn't give up anything. They took the money and they got a huge upshift. If Rutgers is located, in Iowa, they're not in the Big Ten. Okay? It's as simple as that. But what Maryland had to give up was its ACC heritage. An initial team in the ACC back in the 50s, they were in the launch group of the ACC. They don't play North Carolina anymore. They don't play Virginia anymore. They gave up their rivalries. Here's Greg again. What Indiana is doing shows it can be done. Amen. We have a huge hole to climb out of, but I believe Rich knows what he has to do and will get it done. And you know what? That should be on a West Virginia website, Greg, somewhere, as an endorsement, particularly coming from you, an endorsement of Rich Rod and what he stands for. And I think it's helped a bit to tone down the chatter on Facebook. I mean, there's still guys and gals out there that basically said, I never liked this guy. I didn't like to see him. I didn't want to see him hired. And they're saying already, I told you so. But the numbers of people doing that aren't as many as you might expect if Neil Brown, for example, was still in Morgantown. So the bottom line is that, it's going to take time, and we have to have patience. As fans, we have to have patience, and we have to be supportive. It's difficult, and as well as I, it takes money, and the Board of Governors has already voted that they will commit resources to put WVU in the top echelon of the Big 12 conference in terms of revenues. That's extremely important, especially these days. I don't have to tell any of you that. That's just the way it is. So please, more comments. We need more comments. And what I'm going to do, if I can push, just give me a second here. Let me see if I can do this and talk at the same time. I pushed the wrong button. Let me put this up. I'm not, it basically says you can check out StreamYard and get a 10% discount. But what I want to do is this. Let me see. I hoped I was going to do that. I'm trying to put up the link to see if anybody wants to join me in the studio, since we're missing Greg tonight, and I can't find that. Let me see if I can find it here. No, I can't. So we'll take this off. And another note from Timothy Green. Thank you, Mickey and Greg. Make an excellent team. I really enjoy watching the show. I learn a lot listening to you all. We appreciate that, Timothy. And I want to thank you for writing that down exactly as I told you earlier today. And the check is in the mail. It is. So we've got a few minutes more. I see we've been on for about 45 minutes. Obviously, you're really missing Greg. Greg, if you want to type in some more comments, would really appreciate that. But any other comments from any of you out there? I would appreciate that too. And so I think as I think about and get ready for the kickoff, it's a 9:45, so it's about 45 minutes away, is for us to watch closely. This is one of those games. I mean, this is again another cliche. It's always important to watch how a game begins, but you can triple that in terms of tonight's game. Obviously, the thing we can't have happen is that BYU gets that kickoff and makes a quick work down the field and scores. Although, and you know this from watching in the history of watching college games, both basketball and football, and other sports as well. Sometimes a team that has a huge advantage, the way that BYU does, is a big favorite. They can fall asleep and lose their mojo if they get out to a quick lead, especially if fans sort of go, well, this is going to be an easy win. Now BYU is not a place where people are going to be drinking beers, I can tell you, but basically start talking and start texting their friends, et cetera, et cetera. So, but still, we have to do things in the first scripted offense to make sure that we keep possession of the ball, keep the ball away from BYU, and if at least if we don't score, show that we can possess the ball and make it more difficult for BYU. Maybe the biggest advantage we have is that big line where it's tough for a team like BYU if they're not disciplined enough to basically say, well, this is going to be a cakewalk, and that they're not as concerned about this game. In their minds, they've already etched a W. So that's something that we have to be able to hope that does not happen tonight at all. So we're close to 50 minutes, and without Greg, I'm just going to say a few more things, and then we're going to sign off for the night. So this is the time for any of you, if you have any further comments or questions, please do that. Again, what I'll do is remind you that we have a post-game show. Because of the lateness of tonight's game, we just weren't going to do a post-game show that started at 1:30 or 2 o'clock in the morning. We didn't want to stay up for that, even though, as you know, I mean, if you're like me, it's always difficult to go right to bed if you're watching a game, particularly if it's a tight game, even if it's 1:30 in the morning. But still, we didn't want to do a post-game show at 1:30 or 2 o'clock in the morning. So we're going to be on. Hopefully, Greg will be able to join us on Saturday morning, tomorrow morning, Eastern time, 11 to noon. And also, let me also say that we have another great guest next week, our good friend, Mark Parsons. He's the quarterback of our team, lines up our guests. And we're so pleased that, we had a great Wednesday show. If you haven't seen it, please look for it in the archive at the West Virginia channel of the Voice of College Football. We had the great Terry Bowden last week. Before that, the week before, we had a great quarterback in Danny Kendra from the 70s. And this Wednesday, we're going to have another solid quarterback from the 90s, Chad Johnston. So he's going to be our guest on Wednesday's show, 7 o'clock live, and always in the archive after that on the Voice of College Football. And our weekday games, weekday shows are also live, thanks to Darren McGovern, on the New River Network on Facebook, on YouTube, on Roku, and also if you live in South Central West Virginia, on Optimum Cable. More comments here. Let me take this down. Good to see more comments come in. And let me see. They are. The kickoff day and time is ridiculous. If you have to travel this far, it should not be for a weeknight game, nor should it be at this time. If sites feels it feels unfair to our guys, and absolutely. This is on, as I mentioned, Greg, this is on the conference. the conference office should, come on, you can do better. I mean, you guys get paid big bucks. This should not happen. This should not happen. And Timothy has a comment here. Let me see, bring it up. Frank, are you sure that you haven't been a coach in the past because you've totally nailed a game plan that beat the team? You have done a fabulous job handling this by yourself. Well, I'll tell you what, Timothy, I was a professor for almost 40 years, and I'll tell you a story that helped me in my career, and it applies to tonight. I was a young professor, came from West Virginia, got a faculty job at Michigan State, big time place, obviously, right? Big time university. And I was invited as a young assistant professor in my 20s to give a luncheon, after luncheon speech. And so I prepared for it. And as you might expect, I really prepared for it. It was the first time I had been invited at Michigan State to give an after lunch speech to about 200 people. And so I'm up on the dais, nervous as hell. And the person who invited me goes to the microphone. He said, "We're very pleased to have a new faculty member with us today, Dr. Frank Fear, and he is going to be talking with us about something that he's worked on for a long time." And then he said what I was supposed to talk about. Well, guess what? What he said to the audience that I was supposed to talk about is not what he told me I was supposed to talk about. So I walked about 5 paces to the microphone, and in those 5 paces, two things went through my mind. And the first one was, that's not what no, I couldn't say that. So I went up to the microphone without any preparation at all. First presentation behind the microphone, after dinner speaker, and I talked for 30 minutes on something that I was not prepared to talk about. And I swear to God, I don't think anybody in that audience would have known the difference had I given a presentation on what I was prepared to talk about. So obviously, Greg was supposed to be here tonight. I wasn't prepared to do this show solo, but what you do when you go through these experiences, you just do it and hope it turns out okay. But I appreciate that. Okay. Yeah, exactly. Thank you, Mark Parsons, for all your hard work. And you never fail to have great guests. And he does such a great job for the show. And we really appreciate that. And along those lines, let me go up here. I've got a picture of our good friend, Mark Parsons, who's on the left there. And Mark, who lives in Tennessee, does a wonderful job of posting about West Virginia sports on Facebook. You probably are part of groups, and you probably know the name Mark Parsons if you never met Mark Parsons because of the work he does for the university. And a friend that we have not had on the show because he's just been dealt one physical, whammy after another is our friend Mike Dunlap, who also helped us before he fell ill to get guests. He did it. The tandem is unbelievable between the two because they have different networks. They were at West Virginia at different times, but Mike has been seriously ill since Thanksgiving. And last year, as you recall, if you watched our shows, he did the postgame shows with us, and we're still hoping that before the year is over, that Mike will be joining us. He's been essentially in the hospital and in assisted services, had to have part of his leg removed. And so God bless you, Mike, and thank you so much, Mark. Another comment we have that comes up, and true story, Timothy. Wouldn't lie to you. I've never lied to you, Timothy. And that's a true story. But, I would say this. Everybody needs an experience like that. That you have enough confidence, or you develop confidence to be able to do something you didn't think you were going to be able to do. And sometimes the only way you can convince yourself to do it is to actually come face to face with it. So Father, that's just advice from Father Frank. That's all I can say. Just advice from Father Frank. So, okay. Well, it's 55 minutes. Always done a fantastic, you're right. Mike always does a fantastic job. His networks are unbelievable. He picks up the phone and talks with Don Nealon all the time. I mean, he's just unbelievable. And so we miss Mike. And we appreciate both of those folks. So again, join us tomorrow. Let me put this up again. There it is. Join us tomorrow at 11. Hopefully, Greg will be with us for the post-game show. And then if you can't, join us next Wednesday for our regular Wednesday evening program. Next week is a bye week. So as a consequence, we will not be with you, and we'll be with you the week after that. So for Greg Christ, Frank Fear here, we appreciate you joining us tonight. I hope the pregame was of some value to you. Let's go Mountaineers. Let's get after the Cougars. Take care, everyone.